Did you know that more than 90% of cyber attacks can be prevented? Focus Technology helps organizations create a cybersecurity framework to minimize your risk of being attacked. Let Focus Technology's certified team conduct an assessment to determine where the gaps are in your organization, no matter how big or small your company is. Utilizing the industry's best tools, Focus Technology security operations team will monitor and stop bad actors before it's too late. Contact Focus Technology today at focustsi.com and secure your company's most valuable assets. That's focustsi.com. A&B Burger in Beverly and A&B Kitchen and Bar in Boston are redefining guest expectations of a casual restaurant. Both A&B restaurant locations are focused on hospitality, creative menus, and delicious food and drinks. Now, I've been to both restaurants many times and loved everything I've tried. Get to A&B Burger on Cabot Street in Beverly or head across the street from our studio at the TD Garden to A&B Kitchen and Bar in Boston today and experience the A&B difference yourself. I promise you're going to love it.
Carrigan Company is here for you. Yes, Carrigan Company is here for you.
Welcome, everybody, to Carrigan Company, presented by A&B Burger. I'm your host, Kim Carrigan. Hey, keeping me company this week is a guy that I sat next to for years, and you're still waking up to him every morning. Boston 25's news anchor, Gene Levanchy. That's coming up next on Carrigan Company. Welcome, everybody, to the second episode of Carrigan Company. It's brought to you by A&B Burger. Of course, each week we have a rotating co-host who comes in to keep me company. And this week, I have to tell you, I feel like it's Old Home Week, and I'm really excited. My good longtime friend, Gene Levanchy, is here with me.
Should I be rotating here?
Yeah.
A rotating host? Are we allowed to sit still?
No, yeah, that's right. I expect you to spin.
I get dizzy easily these, so I'm just going to stay right here.
It's good to see you.
This feels oddly familiar and comfortable.
You know? I'll tell you something. What's really weird is you always sat, we even sat in this direction.
I know, yeah.
This is the way we sat.
Yep.
So, obviously...
But I didn't have a lovely Carrigan Company mug at the time.
No,
now I do, so I feel like...
Well, I pushed for it then, but you had a little more control at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe,
so, obviously, Gene is the current co-host of Boston 25. And, when I think about this, I have to tell you, I think about it a little bit differently. And this is no disrespect to, obviously, the show that you're on now, which is fantastic. But we were Fox 25, and you guys are Boston 25, and the shows were decidedly different.
Yeah, they are. I mean, we were. When I tell people about the old show we have, can you describe it? I said, well, it was one part traditional morning newscast, one part Today Show, and 3 parts Gong Show, because there was all kinds of crazy stuff that we used to do, and it was a lot of fun, and it appealed to the viewers. It was really different than anything else that was going on in local television at the time. Yeah. And you'll remember that we were owned by Fox at the time, and they thought so much about what we were doing that they brought in other Fox stations, other Fox morning shows from all around the country. They flew in and did a seminar based on our show and what we were doing and saying, this is how you should be doing it in your city.
And if you remember, their talent and their producers would come over and ask us questions. And quite frankly, what we would all say behind the scenes was, hey, you just throw it against the wall and you hope it works. I mean, we had no idea why it worked, except that we all liked one another.
Well, I think that was the big thing, is that there was really great chemistry between everybody. And it was, a lot of it, I mean, you and I knew each other, so by the time you came in, that was great. And you helped really elevate us. But, I give Greg Kelly, who was the general manager at the time, and Lisa Hall a lot of credit, because they brought in we didn't really know each other. I didn't know VB prior to that.
Right.
Didn't know Anquinette. I did know Doug Meehan.
Yep, we knew Doug.
So there was some...
Didn't know Cindy.
Didn't know Cindy, but you threw it all together, and it really clicked, and it worked. And to this day, people are still asking about it. And we had a get-together not too long ago with everybody. And we didn't miss a beat. Everybody just picked up and started laughing. A lot of our producers and technical people who were part of that too were there. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a really tight-knit crew. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in just a couple of minutes. But I just wanted to back up a little bit because I want to make us both really feel old.
That won't be hard.
Okay, we're done.
Yeah, right.
No, so Gene and I actually, a lot of people remember us from Fox 25, but we actually started together over Channel 7.
Yes, we did.
So you were the weekend sports anchor, and I was the weekend anchor.
Yes.
And you were already there.
Yes.
And on my very first weekend, you were not there. And the reason you weren't there is because you and Anne Marie were having your first baby.
So that must have been March 23rd, 1994.
And there you go. So Maddie, now
yes, I have a soon-to-be 30-year-old, if that's what you're...
That's it.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah,
the
right,
first time I met you, you were pushing a stroller, and that newborn was in the stroller, and we have been friends since.
Yep.
We really have.
You came in from Des Moines, right?
I came from Des Moines, absolutely. So I came from a little tiny market, and you had been in the market, but you'd been down in Florida for a while.
My first job was in Fort Myers, and then after that, a couple years there, I wound up in Providence. And then while in Providence, after a year, I worked concurrently at TV 38 doing Bruins hockey. I was a studio host there, which was an unbelievable job and a huge break for me. Thank you, Ken London.
And you had a mustache, if I remember correctly.
I did not. I never had a mustache.
Okay.
If I wanted a mustache now, I would have had to start growing it then. So, but it was a high-profile gig, and it worked out. And then I knew people at Channel 7, and then there was an opportunity there, so it all worked out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we were together on the weekends for a pretty short amount of time, both of us.
Yep.
And then we both moved to the weeknights. One of my favorite Channel 7 stories, I have to tell you, with Gene, is that in '97, we went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, down in New Orleans.
So we left on. So Patriots were taking on Green Bay.
Yep.
And we left on Sunday prior to the Super Bowl. So we were there a full week. Mm-hmm. There were about 15 of us on the crew, and I was the only woman. And so we were staying in the hotel in the Quarter, which was like the official hotel, if you remember, the NFL official hotel.
Their headquarters.
And they put me in the room across from the elevator. And I immediately became the mother. And so at 2, 3, 4 a.m., I could hear the elevator doors, and they'd be like, shh, that's her room right there. Shh. And you all would be clawing down the hallways.
I don't know why. I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, remember, we worked late, right?
So did I.
I know, but you didn't stay out late. That was a great trip. I mean, we had a lot of fun there.
It was
Fortunately, the
unbelievable.
game didn't turn out, the way everybody had hoped. But
right. And local crews don't do that anymore. They don't send 15 people down a full week ahead of time and do all those
plus
shows.
you had
and
to have a satellite truck, which nobody uses anymore because you had to use Now you just use the web or the internet, and that takes your signal. The contraption called a live view. Instead of a big truck, now you have something the size of a backpack, and that gets your signal up.
Through the years, isn't it amazing how the technology has changed?
Unbelievable.
Everything has changed.
Yeah.
Anyway, Gene and I were there at Channel 7 for those years, and Gene left and went one direction, and I went a different. And then we ended up back there at Fox 25, and we started that really crazy experience.
Well, you think about
great fun.
The guests we had coming through, the things we used to do, it's crazy. You were a terrific pole dancer, in case anybody didn't remember that story we did.
I did more things at Fox 25. I'll tell you.
But that was the great thing. Everybody said, I'm in, I'll do it. Yeah. And that's how it worked.
Yeah.
Nobody was like,
So I pole danced there. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you one of my moments that my kids will never forget. Remember, VB got married.
Yes.
And so we had a ceremony on the
studio.
air.
Yes.
And Howie Carr came and officiated. And then after the wedding, we had a reception out on the patio. Mm-hmm. And at every good reception, you have to have a good dance. So Cindy and I, for whatever reason, decided that we would do the chicken dance. And it was a moment that I couldn't take back. And when I got home, my kids, of all the things I have done, my kids said to me, if you ever chicken dance on television again, Mom, never.
And they saw the pole dancing thing. They said this was worse.
I think at least they thought that was kind of cool. Chicken dancing is not cool. Let's just face it.
But we had the bald beauty mugs, all kinds of stuff we did. And nobody once let ego get in the way or anything. It was like, okay, if it's good for the show, we'll do it.
Yeah,
and that's why it worked so well.
We did, absolutely. And we were blessed with the fact that a lot of people would come through that studio.
We did. We had quite a few.
I mean, it was amazing.
I was thinking on the ride here. I mean, some of the people we had, actors. Matt Damon came in. Dennis Leary was with us a bunch of times. John Krasinski came in. Henry Winkler. You remember that day? He was awesome.
Nicest man on
Brian
earth.
Adams came in.
Oh, yeah.
He was John Waite came in and he performed.
Huey Lewis
Huey-
and the News came in.
Well, he didn't have the news. It was just Huey.
Do you
He came
remember?
in, and that was a great day. And then the Bare Naked Ladies came in, and they performed a song off a Kids album that they had. So it was just one thing after another, and you never knew what was coming in the next day, and it was a lot of fun.
It was so much fun. Hey, let's take a second here.
Okay.
We have a new feature here. Of course, it's a new show, so I guess
Well,
it is a pretty
yeah.
new feature as well.
Yes, it would be.
Sort of like the new mugs and the new
Right.
studio.
Love the mugs.
Thank you. Anyway, it's called Fast Five. I think I stole it from the Fox 25 Morning News, so I don't have to really explain it to you. I think Phoebe used to do Fast Five, and so
I
now
heard it,
I'm
I heard
doing
it with Lenny last week. Lenny
Yeah.
Clark.
All right.
Okay.
So this is our Focus Technology Fast Five, and Focus Technology is your trusted
You're
IT
not asking me
partner
technology questions, are you?
for cybersecurity, cloud, and managed services. It's Focus Technology, folks. All right. Pete, our producer, is going to tick for 30 seconds. You got to give me these answers
Okay.
immediately.
All right.
And if you don't get it done in 30 seconds, then a hook comes in and grabs you, and that's the end of it. All right. So
That
if
doesn't seem like
Pete,
such a bad penalty.
if Pete is ready, here we go.
All right.
All right. Sports or news?
News.
Bird or Brady?
Bird.
How much money never killed anybody?
$50 never killed anybody.
Family Guy versus Simpsons.
Family Guy.
What's the worst Fox 25 interview we ever had?
Tommy Lee Jones.
Interesting. All right, here's a.
Did you have another answer?
I do,
Was it
but
Minnie
we'll-
Driver? Okay.
We're going to talk about that. And we, generally speaking, we had fabulous experiences.
Absolutely.
I mean, there was just very few.
Did you have one an interview
Well,
with somebody?
Mimi Driver, I think, was probably one of the nastiest celebrities who came through the door.
That was That was very early
Yeah.
on too. Very
She
early.
asked me if I would steam her clothes.
Yes.
And I was working. I was on the air. And she asked me if I would steam her
She
clothes.
was wearing blue jeans too. Needed them steamed.
Yes.
And she was performing. She had a musical. She had a CD or whatever they back then she had out, and she came on to perform that.
And for whatever reason, her people, and I guess if you think you're so important, why wouldn't your people be asking, will there be makeup? Will there be hair? Will there be? And we didn't have that kind of thing for the guests. And so she shows up looking like she just rolled out of bed,
Yeah.
and then she's mad.
And then we did an interview, and she was miserable the whole time.
Horrible.
It was
Just absolutely
tough.
horrible.
Very tough.
What was your worst?
Tommy Lee Jones was bad.
Okay, so tell this story because
Well, he a movie he wrote and directed, so he's like, okay, you're here to promote this movie, and he one word answers, looking at the ground, and didn't want to be there. And I subsequently learned that he's one of the least liked Hollywood celebrities in terms of media because he doesn't do good interviews. He
Right.
doesn't give anybody anything. He doesn't talk. He doesn't answer questions. It's like, well, why
Why did you come
this
here?
Is your PR group set this up to promote your movie.
Right.
So we're
Right.
giving you the platform to do it, and he was terrible.
What's something about you, Gene? You've been on TV for a long time here. What's something about you think that the audience doesn't know about you at this point?
I don't know. There's not much interesting to dig into there.
Because I'll tell you something. Here's what I know about you, and I think first off, anything you see about Gene is Gene. People,
I mean, I married my high school sweetheart, so maybe that's we started dating at 16.
yeah, I mean,
And then
this
it wasn't
is a very
let straight through. We had time away,
Sure.
which was good. And then we wound up, our paths came back together, and then we got married.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, that speaks to who you are. You're, a loyal, and all those things that you see on TV are true. But I'll tell you something about Gene.
like a dog. Loyal like a
No,
dog.
Gene is, and I'm saying this in a good way. I want you to know this is a good thing. But,
I'll determine if I.
well, Gene is a
See it
very
that way.
sensitive person. He is an emotional person,
Yes.
and I am too. And so we would have these times where something would happen,
Oh, yeah.
and you and I would have to do this.
Yeah.
We'd have to turn away from each other, and I'd have to wipe my eyes, and you'd
Yep.
have to wipe yours.
Yep,
And I
definitely.
mean, and I don't know if people know that about you, but you are a very
Well, yeah, there's some stories
sensitive
you're just like,
person.
oh, this is awful.
Yeah.
And stories coming now. Usually it's with something with kids that goes bad, and it's just like, oh my goodness. And you're human,
Yeah.
like anybody else, and you react the same way a lot of other people do. And your job is to compartmentalize that.
Right.
And I think overall we do a pretty good job of it. But there are those stories that hit you, and it's just like, oh my goodness, I can't.
know. Absolutely.
I can't really separate your emotions from what we're reporting.
Well, for as much fun as we were always having, there was that side of you that I
Did you
always
have a
knew
Did you have a
existed.
favorite interview during those years?
I don't know. There were so many that I
I'll tell you what I like best is that so Brian Adams would be one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Bob Saget would be another.
Oh,
These
yeah.
they came in
I forgot
with
about
no
these
entourage.
guys.
They just walked in. I think Bryan Adams had one guy with him, Jody, who was in the song Summer of '69. Jimmy quit. Jody got married.
Jody,
That guy was with him.
He was with him, I remember.
Saget came in by himself, and he's like, hey, what's going on? Everything you hoped he would be, he was. So he was genuine, and you remember those people. John Krasinski was another guy, too. He was
so
just
great.
like that, yeah.
Can I tell you, this is such a Homer thing to say, but one of my favorite people to interview was always Tom Menino.
Yeah, oh, awesome.
Mayor came in once a week, and he was
Please,
an
if we
absolute
had more,
riot
please,
every day.
More politicians like Tom Menino.
Yeah.
Because he was so accessible and so easygoing. Hey, Kim, how are you? What's going on?
He
And,
remembered the families' names. He remembered everything. He was a superstar.
He
But
come up, did you get that at Filene's Basement? When we're looking at the tie.
I love it. I love it.
All right. He was phenomenal.
Listen, you and I could sit here for the next
could.
2 hours. So, but we've got
We're
a
not?
guest. Well, we sort of are. But we've got a guest who's coming
Awesome.
in that
Yep.
we're going to talk to, and I'm excited about this guest because this guest is somebody that I actually have a past with as well. When it comes to TV, you and I didn't have this same experience, but I'm going to share it. But this is somebody who's made a mark well beyond TV. So that's coming up next. Everybody, you're listening to Carrigan Company. Heading to the TD Garden for a Celtics or Bruins game? Make sure you leave enough time before the game to go to A&B Kitchen and Bar across the street from the Garden. Get the evening started early with drinks, apps, or dinner. Hey, and here's a pro tip for you. Because A&B Kitchen and Bar is so close to the Garden, I suggest you go online to anbkitchen.com/reservations and make a reservation. That's the letters anbkitchen.com/reservations. Can't make it to A&B before the game? Not to worry. The kitchen is always open at least an hour after the TD Garden event lets out. Do you know what generative AI is and how your company can ensure employees are more productive? Focus Technology can help you master the use of Microsoft's newest tool, Copilot. This powerful tool can help your team speed up many of their daily tasks by enabling hands-on learning directly with the software. It can summarize long emails, generate drafts of long documents, and search for answers to key questions. Copilot represents a unique opportunity for businesses to accelerate their understanding of what generative AI can deliver for their company. Contact Focus Technology today to learn more at focustsi.com and bring your organization into the AI revolution. That's focustsi.com.
If you like rum, you're going to love Rumson's Rum, New England's most award-winning rum brand. Rumson creates distinctive and savory flavor profiles by hand-selecting and marrying the finest barrel-aged Caribbean rums. The spirits are then blended and finished in the New England Rum House. Choose from Rumson's Gold, Spiced, Grand Reserve, or Coffee Rum, which is smooth and sweet with a warm roasted coffee flavor, a hint of vanilla, and a decadent buttery finish. Find Rumson's at liquor stores or ask for it at your favorite restaurant. Learn more at rumsons.com. That's rumsons.com. Rumsons. Life lived, life enjoyed.
This segment of Carrigan Company is brought to you by Lucia Lighting and Design, where people in the know go for the best possible lighting and design experience.
Carrigan and Company is here for you. Yes, Carrigan and Company is here for you.
Welcome back, everybody, to Carrigan & Company. Great to have you with us. Of course, we're brought to you today by A&B Burger. Be sure you check out A&B Kitchen and Bar. It's right across the street here from the Boston Garden. Terrific spot. Gene Levanchy is my co-host today, and it's been terrific to have Gene here. So far, we're having a good time.
We're having a great time.
You're okay.
We can
I like
chat
you all right.
day.
Yeah.
All right.
But I'm really excited. I wasn't excited about you, but now I'm really
I get
excited
it. I get it.
about our guest. This is Casey Sherman. Of course, he's a New York Times best-selling author and has a new book that is going to drop here in just a couple of weeks. And that's A Murder. I want to make sure I get it. A Murder in Hollywood, which is terrific. In case I call you Case because you and I have known each other. We have to start by this
Exactly.
story. We've known each other for a while. After I left Channel 7, I went to WBZ TV, and Casey was my show producer at or I should say, I was your anchor at WBZ alongside Jack Williams. And I want to tell this story. Casey was in the process of researching his first book at that point. And I can distinctly remember sitting on the set, and I had your piece in, waiting for the show to start. Casey, how goes the research? Oh, we're pretty good, Kim, working on the book, blah, blah, blah. And I thought to myself, that's so nice, working on a little book. That'll be so
give him a
great.
noogie?
Yeah,
Oh,
little
this
book
is
for
so
his friends and
good.
family to
Good
read.
for you. And now, how many books are we in?
This one is number 16.
Wow.
So, it's been quite a ride and quite a journey. I feel like I should be back in the newsroom writing up, VOSOTs and VOs and anchor packages. But, I knew early on this is really what I wanted to do. And I call myself the accidental author. I never believed I'd be writing books one day, but that's until I was thrust into the spotlight of one of the biggest murder cases in American history, the Boston Strangler case. And it was a personal crusade for me. My aunt, 19-year-old Mary Sullivan, was the youngest and final victim on this notorious 1960s murder spree. And the first book I wrote was really a family memoir about how you deal or try to cope with something like this while also reinvestigating the case. I literally only thought maybe a few people would read it. I was surprised that it became kind of a surprise bestseller. And then I thought, guys, I said, I can do this. There are other stories, to tell. And so 16 books later, 2 feature films, a lot of accolades, but a lot of support along the way. Here we are with A Murder in Hollywood.
Well, a lot of the, we'll get to that in a second, but a lot of the stories are based on things that happened here.
Exactly.
People didn't, I thought The Finest Hours was terrific, and down in Chatham and that whole story about the heroism of that, which was one that was made into the movie.
Yeah, that was a 2016 film starring Chris Pine, Casey Affleck. We were lucky we shot almost the entire film here in Massachusetts. A lot of it took place in Chatham, and that was about a Coast Guard crew that performed a miraculous sea rescue in 1952. And it had been lost to history for maybe 60 years. And I remember distinctly that I was signing books at the Yellow Umbrella Bookstore on Main Street in Chatham of my Boston Strangler book. And my brother, Todd, came up to me and goes, I've got your next book. And he just stumbled upon a very small plaque dedicated to the rescue across the street from the Coast Guard station. And little did we know at the time that it would become an international bestseller and really chart the course for my writing career.
The vessel's still there, too, isn't it?
Vessel is still there. It's actually berthed at Rock Harbor in Orleans every summer. And the prologue of The Finest Hours is my visit to this 36-foot lifeboat that saved 32 men in one of the most perilous storms in American history. And I thought, how did they do it? And that obviously triggered a lot of, thoughts that I had, a lot of research, a lot of interviews, and we landed on, I think, one of the, most inspiring stories that has ever been written.
The courage of the crew.
The crew was...
After you finish A Murder in Hollywood, then you can go back, if you haven't, and revisit.
Yeah, and revisit. Well, and of course, Patriots Day.
True.
Which actually wasn't the title of the book.
It was, no, we called it Boston Strong, myself and my co-author, Dave Wedge. We actually originally called it Patriots Day, but every time we met and interviewed somebody like the family of Sean Collier, for example, we would first walk to our car, and we always drove to these interviews together, myself and my co-author on that project. We would cry for 10 minutes just to let it all out. And then we would look at each other and say, how strong are these people? And we knew Boston Strong at that point was just a marketing slogan that was on a lot of different T-shirts. I said, let's call our book that, and let's tell the people the real meaning behind this and the strength and resiliency, not only from the people that lost loved ones, lost part of themselves, but from ordinary people that went into the smoke and fire on Boylston Street with one mission, which was to save lives.
I mean, that was amazing, and I know how much time you spent with all of those victims and all of those people, and they became like family to you. I remember us having a conversation about that.
They still are.
I'll bet. But the variety of different books that you've written in the subject matters. You wrote the book about Tom Brady.
Yeah,
it was great.
Yeah.
We broke a lot of
revelations there. She said Bird or Brady.
And he was trying to decide.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, you know what? Bird might be another. The next book.
There you go.
Who knows? But where we were drawn to the Tom Brady project was everything that we all witnessed of him going through. Deflategate, and our story really kind of unfolds like a legal thriller. Like a John Grisham thriller, right? So we pay attention to a lot of the things that happened on and off the field, but how does the greatest quarterback in history navigate a world that he's unfamiliar with? a world that, the power of the NFL is weighing down on him at such a rate. And we were able to, come up with a lot of new elements. As to your point, Gene, we broke a lot of news with that book, and now we are adapting that into a feature or a limited series, rather,
Right.
with the team behind the finest hours. So after this podcast, I'm on a call with several Hollywood studios, going through this 8-hour limited series, what it's going to look like. And hopefully we land a studio very soon.
Oh, that's fantastic, Casey.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Well, I want to talk about A Murder in Hollywood, but before we do, I mean, how did this all come about? How do you suddenly become an author and you start writing books and then they become movies?
You write because you love it, right? So, I mean, when I wrote my first book, guys, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I went to journalism school, was in
Sure.
TV news. That taught me the who, what, where, when, and how. Didn't really tell me how to build out a story over kind of a long narrative. So I leaned on my heroes, the Ernest Hemingways, the Norman Mailers, David Halberstams of the world, and I really took their techniques and folded it into my first book. And now, 20 years after that book has been published, I can go into A Rose for Mary, The Hunt for the Real Boston Strangler, and say, that's where I was trying to be Hemingway, short declarative sentences.
Yeah,
Now I'm trying to
sure.
be Norman Mailer. I can't shut the hell up. And about halfway through that book, I found my own voice. I said, okay, that's Casey Sherman.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and I realized that all of the authors that I admired did the same thing. Mailer, was fascinated by Hemingway. Hemingway was fascinated by Jack London. So, I do it because I love it. I think there's, dedication that, people come up to me and say, I have a great story in my head. I want to write a book, and I hope it's a bestseller. I said, slow down. Write the story because you want to tell the story.
Right.
Everything else that happens, you have to obviously navigate and be very professional with, but it's not going to be successful unless the story's there and you're committed to it. And that's writing on the most beautiful day in the summer. That's writing at night when you've got a headache and all you want to do is go to sleep. You know that the story's calling to you. And as long as the stories continue to call to me, I'll keep writing.
But where TV, your background in news helps, and with this book is that everything you do requires an unbelievable amount of research.
That's right.
Putting things together, what goes in, what goes out, and, interviews, things of that nature. That it's not it's not a novel. They're all based on real life things here. So how did you say tell the story in A Murder for Hollywood? You said, all right, now this is the one I got to jump into at this point.
Yeah, well, my agent kind of forced my arm on that one. Helltown, which was a book I wrote a couple of years ago, true story about a serial murder case on Cape Cod in the 1960s. It's really the most horrific serial murder case in American history, and nobody knows about it. I wrote the book. It became a huge bestseller, and now it's being adapted into a limited series for Amazon Studio. Starring Oscar Isaac and directed by Edward Berger, who just won a slew of Oscars for All Quiet on the Western Front.
Wow.
My producing partner on that project is Robert Downey Jr. So it's great to have all that success, but all my publisher cares about is, okay, what's the next one?
Sure.
You have to always try to outdo yourself. So my agent said they want a big story from you, preferably something that's outside of New England. I can throw a rock and find a great story here in our area, but I was really looking to kind of flex my muscles a little bit and expand geographically. And he sent me a number of different articles about solved or unsolved murders. And this one crossed my desk, and it was, big sensational case back in the 1950s. Lana Turner, who was really the Taylor Swift of her time. She was the biggest star in the world. Gets involved with a gangster who ends up dead on the bedroom floor of her Beverly Hills mansion. And the question is, what happened? So I said, give me 2 weeks on this and see if I can dig up something that nobody else has in the last 60 years. And sure enough, we were able to do that.
Do you have a team that you work with, or is
Me.
it just me?
Yes, me. A lot of it is just it's my reluctance to. I need to see it, touch it, and feel it. You know, I have had some researchers work with me in the past, but I always have to go over the work to make sure that, you know, if they miss something, I would find it. And that's, you know, after 20 plus years as a writer rather, and, you know, now almost 35 years as a journalist, you know, we always have to look at the material ourselves to make sure it's accurate and to make sure that, you know, nobody missed anything.
Sure.
So I was, I love the research part of it, guys. I call myself an archaeologist of words because I can dig in and just, you know, close out the world around me, focus on this case, and then, you know, digest it, and then weave it into a really, what I think is an interesting story.
With this, what rocks did you look under to uncover stuff that people hadn't talked about before?
So for, you know, 60 years, the popular story in Hollywood history is that Lana Turner's 14-year-old daughter was breaking up a fight between Lana and her gangster boyfriend, and she stabbed Johnny Stompanato, the gangster, by mistake. He ends up dead on the floor of their Beverly Hills mansion, and the daughter is ultimately released from custody due to justifiable homicide. That's not what happened at all. What I realized was that Lana had been the victim of several very tragic and violent relationships over the course of her life, and a lot of that spread over to her daughter, Cheryl. And when she got involved in the mid-50s with Johnny Stompanato, they didn't just meet each other across a room and fall in love. This was an extortion plot orchestrated by the Al Capone of L.A. at the time, Mickey Cohen, who chose one of his underlings and said, okay, we're going to find the biggest star in Hollywood. We're going to put her in compromising positions.
Wow.
And then we're going to take her for everything she's worth.
Wow.
And that's what they tried to do. And over the course of, you know, a year's worth of relationship back and forth with Lana and Stompanato, she realizes that she's been duped, that she's a victim, and she's trying to navigate the waters of 1958. She's subject to a lot of physical beatings. But again, back in those days, you know, those things weren't talked about in polite conversation, right? So I looked at it as, okay, you know, Lana, I took the knife out of Cheryl's hands, and I put the knife in Lana's hands, because that's what I think happened. And I think Lana stabbed Johnny Stompanato, and I think she did so because Stompanato went a bridge too far with her. Not only did he beat her and subject her to financial ruin, but he also threatened to kill her daughter. And once that happens, you're a mom, you're a dad, I'm a dad.
Yep.
You do anything to
Absolutely.
protect your kids.
What happened to her career after that?
She actually survived the scandal, which is amazing to me, because, you know, she was on television all the way into the 1980s on Falcon Crest,
Right.
you know, with Lorenzo Lamas, and every arch enemy that she had in her life, you know, she outlasted them all. And I look at Lana Turner not as a femme fatale or a villain in history. To me, she's a feminist icon. To me, she's a pioneer of the hashtag Me Too movement. You know, nothing happens in a vacuum. The Harvey Weinsteins of the world didn't just come out of, you know, the ether. You know, this was a system in place that goes all the way back to the beginning of Hollywood. And that's a lot of what I write about in the book, not only the organized crime element in Hollywood, but really these studios that were brutalizing their young actors. Judy Garland, for example, Dorothy from A Wizard of Oz. They had her hooked on drugs when she was 13 years old so that she could work 70-hour work weeks on these family-friendly films that they were cranking out at the time. And she ended up dying tragically in her 1940s.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to them. You know, her blood's on their hands.
A Murder in Hollywood, you said it's in development.
It's in development for a feature film.
Yeah.
You know, I reached out to a friend of mine, Terrence Winter. Terrence is the creator of Boardwalk Empire. He won a slew of Emmys with The Sopranos. He created Tulsa King for Sylvester Stallone. And I just asked him to endorse the book. You know, give me a blurb for the back of the book. And he goes, I'll do you one better. Has anybody optioned this yet? And I said, not yet, Terry. And he said, okay, let's figure out if we can do this together. Wow. And he's such a brilliant, creative, and visual writer and producer that I think the project's in great hands with him.
Fantastic. Wow. So if we were going to see that in theaters, how soon would that be if you were looking at it?
Oh, God, I hope, you know, now that the strikes are over, guys, I would, you know, knock on wood, I hope a couple years. Helltown should be on the small screen in about a year's time. We're navigating with the studio right now. We've already cast Oscar Isaac as our lead. And in that story, I looked at the serial killer case, not just, from an angle of, okay, I'm going to write about a serial killer on Cape Cod. I wanted to elevate the subject. So I bring in Kurt Vonnegut and Norman Mailer, two iconic writers who were in competition with each other to write about this case and solve it in the 1960s. So Oscar Isaac is going to be playing Kurt Vonnegut in our series.
Fantastic.
Very exciting stuff.
All right, Casey, it's A Murder in Hollywood. It drops the 13th of February, for those who are listening. And this has really been fun. It's amazing. I
love seeing you guys.
It's amazing what you've done.
Congratulations on the show.
Congratulations to you
Thank you very much.
Unbelievable continued success.
Excellent.
Should we opt in for the Kim Kerrigan story? That's
coming.
We're
going to wait till let's just wait till after the show is over.
No offense, but I don't think it's going to be as thick as that.
No, it won't.
Couple of chapters.
That's right. All 3 of these pages. Casey Sherman, thank you very much.
Thanks,
all right,
guys.
everybody, coming up next, we're going to take a little walk through history, and it's a sweet one at that. You're listening to Carrigan Company. I have to tell you, folks, I think lighting in your home is one of the most important things that you can do to keep the house updated. And when I need new lighting, I head to Lucia Lighting and Design. Their spectacular 10,000 square foot showroom inside a beautiful mansion in Lynn, Massachusetts is decorated with both architectural and decorative lighting in every single style. From crystal and traditional to contemporary and modern, the selection is absolutely unmatched. Whenever I'm looking for new lighting, as I mentioned, I head to Lucia Lighting and Design. And when I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking for, I rely on the expert guidance of their design team. I know that they can help me. Learn more and book your appointment today. It's lucialighting.com. I want to tell you about the Northeast Arc, an organization that I am so proud to work with on a regular basis. Northeast Arc has been changing lives and discovering abilities for people with disabilities and autism for some 70 years now. They help people with diverse abilities across Massachusetts live as fully included members of society, choosing for themselves how to live, learn, work, socialize, and play. They're hiring, and if you'd like to join their dedicated team, this is how you do it. Visit ne-arc.org/careers.
Big Night Studios is now open for all content creators. Are you looking to start a podcast? Looking to expand your brand? Then visit bignightmedia.com. Check out our rates, check out the studio, and see all the podcasts we have to offer. That's bignightmedia.com.
This segment of Carrigan Company is brought to you by Great Point Wealth Advisors. If you're close to retirement and want a better plan for the future, connect with greatpointwealth.com today. That's Great Point Wealth. They can help.
Carrigan Company is here for you. Yes, Carrigan Company is here for you.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Carrigan Company, brought to us by A&B Burger. Gene Levanchy is my co-host, keeping me company today. And, Gino, we're doing a pretty good job, don't you think?
Cranking along here.
Yeah, thanks for keeping me company. We've got somebody
good conversation.
else. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Casey Sherman, how about it? Huh?
I know. Maybe he needs to write the seamy underbelly tell-all, if there is one, of what we're about to go
about
into
the candy world.
Yes.
Well, Jeremy,
I would read that.
Jeremy Spindler is our guest, and he is the owner of Spindler Confections in Cambridge, and it's great to have you with us. And we have you here today, Jeremy, because first off, Gene is a huge fan of like things that used to exist in the Boston area and now
bygone sort of era.
Yeah,
because it's fascinating. Everything that was here at one time and may no longer be here, but there are things that remind us of what was once there. And I'm sorry, I don't mean
go
to,
ahead.
but just going back to the start of I mean, is it an overstatement to say that maybe Boston area was the birthplace of candy in the United States, or at least
not an overstatement at all, actually.
So there you go.
No.
Yeah, so I started reading about it, and it was referred to as Confectioner's Row in Cambridge. So tell everybody about that.
Yeah. So walking around Boston and Cambridge today, you really wouldn't know that there was once a in today's money, a $1.6 billion chocolate and confectionery industry here. There were at one time about 140 factories sprinkled throughout Boston and Cambridge, somewhat into the surrounding areas, Somerville, Medford, a little down south, but many throughout Boston. There were about 40-ish in Cambridge, largely on Main Street between Central Square and Kendall Square. And that area for many decades was referred to as Confectioner's Row. So much history. Most of it is gone now, but if you know where to look and you kind of have a little bit of knowledge of, the addresses and whatnot, you can still see some remnants from that area.
So, like cheese is in Wisconsin because they have a lot of cows, and they made beer in St. Louis because the water was really good.
Well, we get the baked beans thing here. It ought to be candy.
Candy
town.
Yeah, it should be, right. But why was candy here? Was there something that made that a special spot?
Yeah, so there's a number of things.
Sorry about that.
There's a number of things that seem to lead to the industry really thriving here. And it took a long time. It started out very small. Over a couple centuries, really, is when it hit its peak. So dating all the way back to 1764, the very first chocolate manufacturer in the country. I've also heard it argued that they were the first chocolate manufacturer on the continent. It's hard to verify that, though, so I'll say in the country. They opened up in Dorchester. It was founded by two gentlemen. James Baker had the money, and a gentleman named John Hannon, who was an Irish immigrant. He had the skill to make chocolate. So they partnered up, rented a little mill down in Dorchester, and started what was then Hannon's Best Chocolate. Eventually, it's kind of a little bit of folklore here, but John Hannon apparently went on a trip sailing, I think it was to the Indies or somewhere, we're not really sure, possibly to go get more cocoa beans, and just never came back. So the company basically was just left to James Baker. I believe it was his son, Edmund, took the company over, and then it might have been Edmund's son, Walter Baker, took the company over, and eventually it became the Walter Baker Chocolate Company. So we were producing chocolate in Boston before the United States was even a country, right? 1764,
Sure, right.
1776 was the revolution. So we have chocolate being manufactured here. The very first sugar refinery in the country opens in I always get my dates a little mixed up. 1834, the Boston Sugar Refinery opens. A couple decades later, 1866, the Revere Sugar Refinery opens. So we have two sugar refineries and a chocolate producer. By the mid-1800s, there are two additional chocolate producers that are operating in Dorchester, right near the Baker Company. One called Preston Chocolate and Webb and Trombley Chocolate. So three chocolate producers. It actually was called Chocolate Village. So we had Confectioner's Row in Cambridge, where a lot of the candy companies were. Chocolate Village down in Dorchester, where the chocolate manufacturers were. And we additionally had, I'm going to go back a little bit, so 1847, a gentleman by the name of Oliver Chase, who is a druggist in Boston, like a pharmacist, what we would call today, but druggist is what they were called back then.
We don't call them druggists anymore, I don't think.
No.
I think that means something different now.
I've always been referred to as a druggist. I'm trying to be historically accurate for the time. So back then, drugstores or pharmacies and candy shops were kind of one and the same. So a lot of the ingredients that went into making medicines were the same that went into making candy. Basically, you leave the medicine out and you have candy, right? It wasn't super sweet. The sugar was very expensive, but for the day, it would have been very sweet. So everything was stamped by hand. So everything was rolled out, stamped by hand, one at a time, no machinery. So 1847, Oliver Chase decides to invent a little machine. And I do have a picture. I don't know if the video will catch it real good, but there's a
And
little
for those of
artist
you who are
rendition
listening,
here.
unfortunately,
Yeah,
you maybe
So,
can't see
yeah.
it, but it's a...
But I can describe it to you. So
Sure.
it's just an artist rendition. This is from the 100th year of the Necco Company's, their anniversary. So there's a gentleman with a little hand-cranked machine. It looks kind of like what we would think of as a pasta maker today. Stamps out little lozenges.
Yeah.
And that little piece of machinery is considered to be the first piece of machinery dedicated solely to confectionery production in the world. He immediately patents it, starts a candy company with one of his brothers called Chase & Company. We have one of the boxes over there actually from Chase & Company. And eventually, Oliver Chase passes away. The company merges with two other confectioneries in the area. I'm drawing a blank on their name at the moment. And they form the New England Confectionery Company, which we know as Necco.
It's Necco, right.
So Necco, upon its closure in 2018, was the oldest and longest continuously running confectionery in the United States.
Wow.
So, yeah, First
So
chocolate
when they
company,
ask you
first
about
sugar
it, so
refineries.
you mentioned all of those confectionery companies in Cambridge. Did we have a sweet tooth problem back in the day?
Yeah,
that's a lot.
actually,
what's going on there?
It's good that you brought that up because one of the other reasons this industry took hold is the Puritans, when they came over, they did have a pretty hefty sweet tooth. So there was demand for chocolate and sugar. Boston was a port city, so we had a lot of goods coming in as well. And a big one that really helped with the chocolate production is the climate. We didn't have air conditioning until the 30s, 40s, something like that. So they were able to produce chocolate for 10 months out of the year in Boston. Literally, you couldn't do it anywhere else.
Wow.
The further south
Cool.
you went, the shorter the season got,
Sure.
so the less profit there was for you.
So at one point, I think I read somewhere that like Tootsie Rolls were made in Cambridge, and I mean there was all you name the candies.
Well, we know
that you
this
remember.
because if you may,
Yeah, so tell that.
This
Yeah.
is an early mold for the Sky Bar,
Yeah.
right?
Sky Bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
was, if I understand correctly, that was invented by the Necco Company.
Yeah.
And Sky Bar is particularly noteworthy because it was the first confection to have 4 different fillings. Right before that was all one bonbon with one filling or one candy bar with one filling.
The caramel, the marshmallow.
Oh boy, good
What
luck.
am I missing?
There was vanilla nougat and
Yeah.
a peanut butter.
Peanut
filling.
butter.
And they're still manufactured
Yes,
today,
Yeah.
too.
Well,
yeah,
somebody
yeah.
bought the
They bought the
rights to it
recipe,
or
if you
whatever.
will, right,
Yeah, to keep
exactly.
producing them. I love the Sky Bar. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry to take us off track.
No. That's all part of it. So anyway, what ultimately happened is my understanding anyway is that bigger companies started coming in, buying up all these little manufacturers over there in Cambridge or whatever, and they fell under other big umbrellas, Nestle. You know, we could go on forever.
very, very
you know,
big
Mars-
part of it,
Right,
yeah.
right. And then it just started to go away.
Yeah, so kind of like the rise of the industry took about 200 years. So 1764, when the first chocolate manufacturer opened, the peak of the industry was in the 1960s. So it's about 200 years. And then it was a slow decline over like 40, 50 years. So by the time we get to around 2000, they're pretty much all gone except for just a handful left. Necco was still around, for example. So it was very gradual. There was no big collapse where they suddenly just went away.
Sure.
The rise of corn syrup apparently had an effect. A lot of the refineries closed here in Boston, and you go where the corn is if you're going to make corn syrup. So their prices went up. A lot of companies, the kids didn't want to take it over. They were family operations, and you get to a generation that's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So they shut down or they close or sell their assets. There was some bankruptcies, economic issues, changing consumer tastes as well. Just the rise of the big three. Nestle, Mars, M&M, and Hershey's, like they couldn't really compete with those.
Sure,
companies.
absolutely.
They were so big and they were so good at what they did and making it so effective.
But they left their mark because you get around as we're coming up to Valentine's Day. The sweethearts have stood the test of time.
They have.
Over
Absolutely.
years and years and years, and they're still very much a part of. And now you can, if you're lucky enough, I think sometimes they do this. You can actually have them custom made for you with the little messages on there.
A little
so-
bit, have it stamped on it.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
bet.
I Heart Kim, I think, was the most popular one, wasn't it? I think that was it. Yeah.
You brought great stuff, and we really appreciate you doing so. The museum, tell us about the museum. Sure.
Yeah, so in our little chocolate shop, as we were starting it, moving into a brick and mortar location, we were trying to think of, how, like, what the look wanted to be. And we had been to some other candy shops where they had old candy boxes and they, up on high shelves. And we're like, well, that'd be kind of fun. And as we discovered, so I say we, my husband and I, co-owner, as we discovered this candy history very slowly, we didn't realize how big it was until probably a few years into it. Yeah. We thought it would be fun to decorate the store with old boxes and ephemera. So we went to eBay, went to antique fairs, things like that, just trying to find old boxes and advertisements. A lot of luck on eBay. Over the years, we've had a lot of patrons just give us things that they found.
So
in
this
their-
stuff here you collected sort of got along those lines.
Yep,
That's how you
yep,
acquired
most of it. A lot of these items are actually given to us by one particular person who I do want to mention here in a moment. But just slowly, as we acquired more things, we wanted to sort of try and do an actual museum. So our store is very, very small. And when I say museum, I do use that with a grain of salt. It's a 400 square foot retail space with a museum sprinkled in to the retail area. So if you come to our shop, don't expect, big, expansive exhibits.
Right.
You're not going to see them, but there is a lot to look at, definitely. So lots of boxes and advertisements. Some of the stuff I brought here today we have in our collection. A lot of things from Necco and a lot of things from Baker. And this is where I wanted to mention a couple years ago, a former vice president of research and development at the Necco company, when it closed, Jeffrey Green, contacted me out of the blue and basically said, I have a whole bunch of Necco items that we literally salvaged from the dumpster upon its closure. They were all going to be thrown away. He and a colleague got in the dumpster and saved this stuff. I'm trying to find a good home for it. Would you like it?
Wow.
To which I said no. Right, of course. I very emphatically said yes.
Right.
And he showed up a couple weeks later with a car full of items. So we have about 2,000 recipes from the Necco factory, dating from 1917 to 1963, I think was the last one. We have some molds that I brought today. We have some ink stampers and cutter assemblies for making Necco hearts and different things like that. Lots of advertisements.
Yeah.
We have, I'll describe it a little bit for those just listening. There's a little wooden, I don't really know what to call it, but it's a little hand packer that they would use to measure out Necco wafers. They didn't have machinery early on, so literally you grab a stack of wafers, you put them on this little measuring device so that you know how many to go into a packet. The Skybar mold we got from them, that's one of the original proofs when they were trying to design the bar and figure out what it would look like. It was really unbelievable.
Well, you know, the thing that I love is that you get a passion for this, and if it weren't for you, this stuff would be lost to history. We would never know this stuff. We would never see the artifacts, get to look at them. So
Absolutely.
I think it's awesome.
It is.
What you guys are doing.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Let's tell everybody the address. And by the way, there's also, of course, Spindler chocolates. You brought us some. We have some caramels here, and this looks like a beautiful
I would
box
encourage people to enjoy chocolates while they're looking at some
most
artifacts
definitely,
in the museum. That'd
yes,
probably
you
be the best
absolutely do
approach.
want to do that. It's 2257 Mass Ave in Cambridge. And you've been kind enough that you're making an offer here on Carrigan Company. Anyone who places an online order through the end of February and enters the promo code Kim is going to get 20% off their chocolates. So,
I told you I heart Kim.
I am telling you.
I told you.
So be sure. The website is
SpindlerConfections.com.
Okay, great. Hey, Jeremy, this has been fun. Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Yeah, really appreciate your passion for it. I really do.
Thank you so much. We'll throw in, you're also welcome to use that code in store as well. Just give the cashier, just say, we heard the podcast on Carrigan Company, and we'll honor that as well.
Super. Great. Thank you very much. You're listening to Carrigan Company. Is your life getting more complex? Maybe jobs are changing, you're nearing retirement, shifting family dynamic, uncertainty about your financial future. It may be the right time to contact our sponsor, Great Point Wealth Advisors, for holistic planning and advice. Great Point Wealth Advisors is a registered investment advisory firm with offices in Boston and Danvers, Massachusetts. Listen to their short form podcast, Great Points, on most streaming platforms, or contact them at greatpointwealth.com. That's greatpointwealth.com. Welcome back, everybody, to Carrigan Company. Just a couple of seconds left here. Gene Levanchy has been keeping me company today. It'd be okay with me if you keep me company all the time. It was fun, my friend.
I told you, my friend. Just like old times.
It was.
Just like old times.
It's been fun. You know what? I've had a lot of co-hosts and a lot of people sat next to me. Some of my fondest memories are with you, for sure.
A lot of fun. Thank you for all of those years, too.
Yeah, absolutely. You bet. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Carrigan Company. To find out who will keep me company and be my co-host on the next episode, be sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok. Carrigan Company is recorded at the Big Night Studios at the TD Garden in Boston. You can view the podcast on YouTube and listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure you tell a friend. The executive producer of Carrigan Company is David Thompson. Our engineer is Peter Hurley. And our social media managers are Grace Carrigan, Colby Thompson, and Riley Thompson. See you next time.
Yes, Carrigan and Company.